strong.
What's going on, boys?
It's a big day.
Oh yeah, big day, big day. Here always with Rory Keith at Kenora, Ontario, Colin Kajewski, Collingwood, Ontario, and I'm Jake Falco. All right, we're your hosts of Between the Dots. Fantasy hockey draft day, right? Who else loves draft day, right?
And especially, we'll get into it, but with the amount of teams we got going, I've never done one with this many teams, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, other than playoffs, draft day is the most exciting, no? But yeah, a lot of teams, so know your third line skill players.
Yeah, seriously. We got our fantasy draft happening tonight, the Between the Dots Fantasy Hockey League. First time ever. We got an 18-team league, so that's quite a large league there. And I've also never been in a league that big before either. So we're gonna be getting down to the fourth line grinders and right down to the nitty gritty of it. So we got on tap today. We basically are going to go through all the tips and tricks of drafting that championship winning team. So we will try to reveal as much of our knowledge as possible, but without, we don't want to necessarily give away all our secrets. That's what we were saying, but I think we'll share our insights. So,
Felix, you must be pleased with having this many teams because I guess that means some Sens players are going to get drafted if we have 18 teams.
Yeah, exactly, right? All the way down to we'll get the fourth liner Parker Kelly in there as well. Who knows? He might be a late sleeper.
Yeah. Kijo's good for at least one Sens chirp per ep.
Yeah,
for sure. Oh yeah.
Get it out early. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, there'll be more. Don't worry.
Well, I don't know how much you want to listen to me because I don't necessarily do well in these fantasy hockey leagues. So it's we'll see. We'll see how I do this year though. I'm going for the chip though. So I hope we do well.
Yeah. We appreciate your donation.
Yeah.
When do we find out the draft order for that?
So draft order will be revealed 30 minutes prior to the draft. So draft is scheduled for 8:30 p.m. tonight, and basically you log on 30 minutes beforehand, so 8 o'clock, and you'll know where you're picking in that order. And it's a snake draft as well too. So like if you pick 18th, then you're gonna pick 19th as well. So it kind of follows that. Yeah.
What do you guys think in a league this big? Where do you think the best place to draft is?
Oh, I was just going to ask you guys that if you like being in the middle or at either end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think the middle because then you probably you got to consider like over 30 players until you pick again. So you might end up reaching for a few guys, right?
Personally, I like first overall just because then you get McDavid. And that's a great way to start your team if you can start with McDavid. But I like being at either of the ends personally, just because then I can plan ahead for like two guys at once. That's just what I think. Versus like you're kind of at the mercy of the draft if you're in the middle of it. You just you take the best player available to you at that time. Whereas if you are at the end, I find you can kind of set the pace a little bit and plan a little bit. Two guys at once. 2 picks at once, essentially. So
doesn't make you nervous though with the quick 2 picks in a row?
It does, especially for like that second pick. You really got to be like watching the draft and then have an idea of who you're taking, or else then you're gonna like kind of run into some pressure situations where you might not pick a guy that you love. But it's 30 seconds per pick for our draft this year. So with 18 teams at 30 seconds a pick, basically it'll be around like 2 hours ish. That's starts at 8:30 again tonight, and basically we draft 6 forwards, 4D, 1 goalie, and 4 bench spots, and we go from there. It's a points-based league, and it's going to be basically you have a matchup every week, and whoever has the most points wins the matchup, and that counts as a win, and go from there. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun, and like I said, I've never been in a league this size either, so it'll be interesting to see what the teams kind of look like when everybody's got our guys drafted and how far down the depth charts we're taking guys from.
I've actually never been in a league where you just have forward positions.
Yeah.
I've usually had them broken up by wingers, so this makes it a little bit easier too.
Yeah, exactly. Because the centerman depth I find is always a little bit. There's more centermen available too than like specifically right wing. I find is a hard position to fill. So this way it makes it a little bit easier. You just need to draft 6 forwards versus having specific positions like left wing, center, right wing, so on. Yeah. So like we said, starts at 8:30. We're gonna head into kind of our tips and tricks. Kind of we'll each go through one of our tips that we have. We'll kind of each bounce some ideas off of that. Do you guys want to talk about any of the preseason action at all before we get into that, or
Have you guys been watching any games?
a little bit here and there? Like I've just been following so far, like some of the waiver activity as well too, seeing which guys are getting sent down, specifically those guys from the Sens, right? Like we lose Lassie Thompson to waivers. It's kind of some bad asset management there on Ottawa's part, but we also sent down Bernard Docker and Sokolov, and they somehow both made it down without getting claimed. So I was happy about that. At least we have a chance to call them up later in the season if we need it. But like I don't look too much into the preseason games unless it's the Sens kicking the Leafs' butt. But other than that, like it's no, I don't look into too much of that. It's more so it's just a nice sign to see though if they're winning games early, because then you can go into the regular season and you're on the right track, right? You have some momentum. So
Yeah, the Wings they played Chicago twice, so I tuned into those just to watch Bedard, just to get a sense of what he's looking like. And yeah, he looks really good, but he loves to keep the puck. He does not like to pass it off much. You could tell he wants to like make his mark early. He wants like his own Cooley moment, I think. And I think he was pretty upset last night when his first goal was an empty netter. I don't think he liked that.
Do you think he's gonna have a game where like just somebody rocks him and just like because
I
he's
think
a
so.
small guy too, and like if he's trying to hold on to the puck, like you don't those NHL guys they don't let that stuff fly. So
I feel like there's always, as soon as a new guy comes into the league, whether it's the first game or 5 games in, they all always have that wake up call.
yeah, he could be one of those guys that's going early too in fantasy drafts that a little like might be somebody you want to fade too. Like you either take a risk on him and hope that he pans out to be elite at the kind of the ranking that he's being given right now, or you fade him because like all rookies, they sometimes struggle in that first year, right? Everyone thought Lafreniere was going to be lights out in his first year, and he was getting drafted up with, like top 50 in leagues. But obviously that didn't pan out, and everybody thought he was going to be the next big thing. And he was playing with line mates too that were like capable as well too, with the Rangers, and didn't pan out for him. So kind of always got to be cautious of those rookies too.
I feel like they always go earlier than they should. It's strictly based on the hype of them being drafted first overall. Like, yeah, Bedard, the talent is so clear, but what sets McDavid apart is the skating, right? He doesn't quite have that skating, so I don't know how much separation he's going to get to create those kinds of opportunities for himself. But like, I'm sure you guys saw it. It was all over social media when he walked Edmondson the other night, putting the puck behind his own legs and walked right around him. But yeah, we'll see. But I always fade the first and second overallers in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, it's tough to live up to the hype. It's not easy being a rookie in the NHL, 18-year-old going against guys who have been doing it for their whole careers, basically, grown men. So, yeah, basically, we kind of went over the point system a little bit too with, in terms of like the numbers of players that we're going to be drafting in our fantasy league. Goals are worth 5, assists are worth 3 points, and then you get an extra point for a power play point or a shorthanded point. And then shots on goal, hits, those are both worth 0.5, and then blocks in our league are worth 0.25 as well. So those are your kind of point systems for that. So it's always nice drafting guys that lay the bod a little bit too and shoot the puck lots. So keep that in mind when you're drafting. And then each team is supposed to draft one goalie in our fantasy league too. So that's kind of another change. Typically it's like 2 goalies, but just because of the size of the league, we wanted to make it 1 goalie each team. So pick your guy and stick with him, which could mean that you have a significant goaltender advantage if you pick a goalie early as well, like Shesterkin or a guy you know who's going to be logging a lot of games for a team. That could be a significant advantage there too. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, big thing too is for myself when I draft a fantasy team, I always like to draft the guys that I know have been successful in the past and are going to continue to be successful. So we mentioned it kind of off the top. Bedard, yeah, everyone wants him. Is he going to go higher than he's rated maybe, or is he even rated too high? That's yet to be seen, obviously. But it's for me, I always want to focus on the skill of the players that I know can produce. So like your Brad Marchand or Pasternak. I hate that I'm naming Bruins players, but they always come through in fantasy. Um, Obviously McDavid, but that's a given. Guys like McKinnon, they've done it in the past. They're going to continue to do it. So you want to focus on your skill guys and guys that you know have performed in the past and will continue to perform.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the other tips that I have too is focus on skill. Don't necessarily, like I know we said, like shots and hits are counting for stats, but don't necessarily draft players just because they shoot the puck or just because they hit, right? Try to focus on guys with skill, guys that you know might be playing on the power play as well too, right? Keep an eye on the depth chart. Like you can go search up on daily face off and they got all the projected lines for each team. So just be aware of and try to shoot for skill, right? Those skilled guys are going to get more opportunities and ultimately hopefully get you more fantasy points.
Yeah, that was the key, is the opportunity, right, with the power play. I like how we don't have points for plus minus. A lot of the leagues that I'm in, it's the exact same. It's like 1 point if you're +1, and it's 1 point if it's on the power play. But there's a little bit extra emphasis here for those players that are on the special teams units, and yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I know my dad and my brother are both Habs fans, so maybe
Is that why there's no plus minus?
that's that. Yeah, it's a good thing there's no plus minus, even for a couple of those Sens guys too, like Shabbat. But just I also don't really like plus minus either. Plus minus is a bogus fantasy stat. If you get a minus for like if you're on the ice and you're a plus minus counts as -1 point, and you're one of the best players on the team, and you're on the ice and your team's losing, and you have an empty net at the end of the game, and then you get the other team scores a goal on you, and that counts as a negative point, you shouldn't be punished for being on the ice as a good player late in the game. So I hate that stat. And like it also rewards players who are just on good teams, and it doesn't necessarily represent skill of a player. So I'm a big advocate for no plus minus. Yeah. But speaking of plus minus, yeah, like those Habs players, they're going to be minuses this year. So it's a good thing there's no Habs guys. But don't be drafting players from your favorite team either, right? Like me as a Sens fan, so I'm going to try and draft like 1 or 2 Sens guys, but you don't want to have like a team full or like 3, 4 guys that are all on one team, or else then it's going to be you're going to have weeks where you do really, really well, but your team's going to be inconsistent based on how the Sens or whoever team that you have drafted for, whatever team those players are for, it's going to be inconsistent.
Plus, when your favorite team has a bye week, you got to write off the whole week, because if your team's not playing and you've got all the guys from that team, they're not going to get any points. I've been in leagues before where I'm a massive Leafs fan. Obviously, if you guys have been watching, talk about the Leafs all the time. If I'm picking first overall, I am not picking Austin Matthews. So if you're picking first, do not pick Austin Matthews if you're a Leaf fan, because he's not the best fantasy player for sure. It's just they'll obviously go high in the draft, but your favorite team, I'm bad for this, and I'm saying this right now, and watch me pick a bunch of Leaf players. It's tough sometimes because you watch all the games, you want to watch your fantasy players, but if you want to do well, you have to draft who you think is best in that position when it's your turn to draft. And yeah, like Felix said off the start, don't pick players from your favorite teams unless they're in a good position, obviously.
Yeah, and even then, like not even just your favorite team, but focus on like don't pick players from one team either. Like even if it's not your favorite team, even if you think like, oh, like Colorado is going to be like a really good team this year, so I'm going to try and draft like McKinnon, and then I'm going to try and sneak like maybe like, like Drouin later on, and then I'm going to try and sneak like another one of the Avs guys on the second line, like those guys, like try not to stack too many guys on one team. It's fine to have like a stack of like two guys or max three, but definitely don't go over that. And definitely like you wouldn't want to have like 2D plus like two forwards from the same team. Like that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, the only time that I would consider stacking would be like a winger and then a defenseman who's going to be on that same power play.
Mm-hmm.
I usually stay away from like the centerman and the winger or something like that, but it keeps it somewhat spread out. But if you know that, if you got a winger and then you got, like if you got Robertson and then Heiskanen's kind of in that range, I would maybe look to pick him up and get, like, Heiskanen's be quarterbacking that first unit. So if you're able to stack those power play points for a power play that's really good, then that's the only really point where I would consider reaching. Like that point, Fulks hits home pretty hard. I think the worst fantasy season I ever had. I thought that I was just outsmarting everyone. I drafted Gabrick and Richards, and then I traded for Rick Nash. So I had that full Rangers top line one year, and it went horribly for me. I thought I was outsmarting everybody there.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. Team's not consistent enough. So avoid doing that. What do you guys think about drafting players who are injury prone or like have a tendency to have injuries? What's your opinion on that?
I don't know. It depends how you look at it. Because first of all, you kind of have to really do some research, and if you want to draft an injury prone player, it's what kind of injuries did he have? Like, was he out for half a season? Did he break his finger in blocking a shot? Like, because those things are obviously random. You can't really do anything about that. So I think a lot of it actually depends on what the injury was and how long the player was out for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Like Mark Stone makes me a little nervous. 2 back surgeries last year. Like that's a tough one to come back from. Even Bertuzzi had back surgery, but guys like Josh Anderson are just on my no draft list all the time. Like he's got great category coverage. He hits, he shoots. He's going to be on your power play, but that guy's just hurt so much. Same thing sort of goes for Torrey Krug. Like he's a lock for 20 missed games a year, I feel like.
Yeah. I feel like a guy, like again, it comes down to like kind of what you said, Kijo. What kind of injury was it? Like for example, for me, like one of the guys that I'm kind of fading, even though he's a Sen, is Josh Norris. Like he's kind of had back-to-back shoulder surgeries, and shoulders make me a little nervous because you take one bump and then you re-aggravate something. So for me, I tend to avoid guys who typically like miss like 20 games a year. If I know that that's like a consistent trend over the past few years, then I don't really want to draft them. I don't want to risk it. But if, for example, it's like Brad Marchand, like last year, he was supposed to miss like the first month or two of the season, and people shied away from that just because he was injured. But then he doesn't really have a history of being injured. So then he comes back and he's available for the entirety of the season and actually producing well. So it all comes down to like what kind of injury was it and how long is the recovery time if they're already injured, and is there a chance that they could re-injure themselves. And so I just tend to kind of avoid those guys. I draft guys that are ready to perform because I don't want to start the season off with like a bunch of guys on the IR as well. But again, if you can find a guy at a value and he can come help you on later in the year, then yeah, I would take him. He'd be worth taking for me.
Even considering those players who might get that extra opportunity with that top guy who does end up being hurt. Like going back to the Torrey Krug thing, I'm a fan of Justin Falk, especially for these leagues. And if Krug gets injured, Falk's that next guy up for PP1 too. So he's getting that extra exposure.
Yep.
Just gave away one of the guys that I liked, but
yep.
He's one that I kind of keep in the back of my mind.
Yep.
I think the same goes kind of on that point as well. Is if you'll see who, I can't really think of an example, but somebody you want to pick, if their line mate is injured, that's another big thing think about because okay, like Makachuk, we said is going to be out at the start of the year. Is somebody on his line or even his team like Barkov on the power play? Is he going to go as high as he normally would because a guy that normally plays with him will be out or plays on the power play with him? So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Ooh, tying into this, I guess it was a bit of news that happened within the last week as well, tying into this topic. But Vasilevsky out for the next 2 months. How does that impact where he gets picked this year?
Yeah, that's again. I'm not touching Vasilevsky this year unless I'm getting him at like a huge value later in drafts, just because he's on a team that's kind of declining right now. So even if he does come back, how well is their team going to be performing? I don't know at that point. I don't know what the vibe's going to be like in Tampa then. So I'm just at his where he's being drafted. I'm kind of fading him, and then like if he's available to me a little later in drafts, then I'll consider. But like I'm not rushing to take Vasilevsky by any means. That's for sure.
Yeah, we don't know what the extent of it is, but
Yep,
back
that too.
surgery, like that's pretty
Yep,
major. That's pretty major, right?
yep,
But yeah, there's that could be a double-edged sword. Like I know a lot of people are fired up that, oh, we get to face Brian Elliott
yep.
for the first like 2 months, but like this is the first full summer that the Bolts have had off. Like maybe what if they come back well rested? Vasi's well rested, and they just go on an absolute tear once he comes back.
Yep.
Like it could go either way, but I want to lean your side with that one, folks.
Yeah. So I'm not touching him. Uh, just kind of be aware too in drafts. Like, what do you guys think about drafting like older guys in drafts? Like, do you find that you want to tend to stay away from guys who are older and go for guys who are younger, or what's your philosophy on that?
Well, I won't be drafting Mark Giordano. I can tell you that much. I don't
Yeah.
know. It depends how old, I guess.
Yeah.
And kind of like I said off the top, if they've even if they're getting older, like Sidney Crosby, that's
Mm-hmm.
a good one.
Yep.
Sidney Crosby will get drafted, and I'm assuming he'll go at a pretty good in I don't know exactly what round, but he'll go pretty high in the draft because he's Sidney Crosby. He's been good for so long, and I don't think he's going to decline that much. Like I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff. Maybe he'll start to get a few less points every year, but depends how old. And yeah, a guy like Crosby, he's older, but he'll be picked for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in the key in just like a year-over-year format too, right? Like if it's keeper, then yeah, Crosby probably slides around, but you're just worried about these 82 games, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably not experiencing as much of that decline.
Yeah. So one of the things I always look for is like that decline. Basically, that can either happen from being an older player or if you're coming off like a career year too. So like if you're a guy like Nugent Hopkins who has like a massive year last year, right now he's being drafted fairly high in fantasy drafts, and for me, he's part of a great team and he plays power play with those guys, which is awesome, but like does he match his career year? It's hard to say. So for me, like I tend to shy away from those guys that have like the one-off like explosive years. Um, and if they struggle, because if they come out and they struggle to match that, then you're not getting return on your draft position essentially. So
Yeah, that's pretty much how I like my main philosophy with trying to draft is just the returns to the averages, really. So like players on the high side, they're going to be treated with that sort of hype, like the number one overall pick,
yeah,
versus guys from like the other end. You can't expect Huberto to get 60 like 50, 60 points again, like he's going to regress back to his mean as well, but in the other direction, like
yeah,
Huberto's one of those guys where, okay, maybe this was his low, but then his last year with Florida where he had like 115 points, all right, that's his high. I think you can reasonably expect something in the middle. But
mm-hmm.
like I feel like nobody would be surprised if he gets 82, if he gets 80 plus points this year. Like we talked about it last week. Their lineup, like their forwards are skilled, and based on where you see him ranked, it's just I don't know. I feel like they're expecting him to repeat what he did last year, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. Another guy too I find like that is Swayman from Boston, right? Like he's being drafted pretty high based on his numbers from last year, and I just don't see Boston being as solid of a team, which means he's gonna not have necessarily as good of numbers. So I would fade Swayman as well too. I'd rather take a different goalie other than him. But again, if you could find him at a value, then yeah, take him. Same with with anyone, right? Like if you can get him later in the draft after people have been fading him, then yeah, somebody take him. But I'm definitely not rushing to take those guys either. So yeah.
I think that kind of goes. I don't know. What do you guys think about Buffalo though this year? Like, I know that a couple of us had them in playoffs, but their goal totals last year were so high, and compared to the year previously, like, do you think that is sustainable? Do you think that regresses a little bit? Like Tage Thompson, he might be one of those guys that is just too rich for what I think that he'll do this year.
Mm-hmm. He is going really high in fantasy drafts. Like for him, I like Tage Thompson, but it's tough because like at his price, like you're also drafting guys like Stutzla or even like I think like even Marner, Matthews, even like he's going right up with those guys. Like it's not like he's going back with like he's going almost top 10 in fantasy drafts. Like Tage Thompson is being drafted as like a top 10 player in the NHL in terms for fantasy as well too. So it's like it's risky. Like if you ask a Buffalo fan will be like he's nasty and he's got a great shot and all that, but
I got a question for you, Felix.
Yeah.
So it comes down, you've got these two guys. Who are you drafting? You just mentioned them both. Tage Thompson or Tim Stützle?
Oh, like for me, I'm going Stützle.
Just because of course he is. Don't draft players from your own team.
All right.
Hey, I would maybe that is a good question. That's tough. I would maybe go Stützle there as well. Honestly,
there's potential there, and it's not like Stützle doesn't lay bod. He hits right. Tage Thompson. Stützle though is actually a little further down the list, so you could maybe make the argument to wait. Like Tage Thompson's being drafted around where Brady Tkachuk is as well. So like, if it was Tage Thompson or Brady Tkachuk, like, it's close. Like, I just I want to have somebody that's good on my team from the Sens. So this is again when I said
against everything you just said.
This is why I began the episode saying, "Don't listen to me, guys. I'm not the best to take advice from. I know how to give advice, but I don't know how to follow it. So it's no, I'm taking one guy from my team at least in this draft tonight.
Not if I get him first.
But I'm taking a Sens guy.
I'm taking all the Sens, baby. I'm taking them all.
That's not a good strategy, though. You don't want to do that either.
Then you sell them high before the season starts, right back to them.
Yeah. That might be the play. Yeah,
it always works.
That might be the play. So, no, it's like if there's guys like. Even right now, like Jack Hughes is going after Brady Tkachuk in fantasy drafts, and like Tkachuk's ranked so high just because he hits and he shoots, right? Like he hits a lot. Like he led the league in hits, so it's he hits and he shoots a lot, which is why he's ranked higher in fantasy. Skill wise, obviously Jack Hughes is a better skill player, and it's tough to say, right? It's tough to judge. So
I don't know. For me,
in that position.
For me, that's a pretty easy one though. Like if you got a guy that's going to put up, 15, 20 less points, even if you're getting that consistency with the category coverage, I'm taking that guy over the guy who'll get 90 points but gets 10 hits a year. Like if that guy goes on a dry spell, then your first overall pick gets you 2 fantasy points for that week. You're toast. But if you got Brady Tkachuk, he might not get any points, but he could still have 30 hits, so he's still at least is contributing to your totals.
Yeah, it's a good point, which is why he's ranked higher, which is why certain guys are ranked higher, not just him, but like even on D, like Charlie McAvoy's ranked pretty high as well, and like JT Miller's ranked pretty high. Like all these guys are ranked high, not necessarily because they're the most skilled. Like guys that are being drafted after them are like Johnny Gaudreau, right? Many guys. There's other examples too, like Beniers even afterwards. Like that's a pretty skilled guy, but they just don't cover the categories necessarily as well as some of the other guys do. So pay attention to that as well when you're drafting, and have like a mix of both too, right? And don't necessarily just draft all guys that lay bod and only guys that hit and don't necessarily get points. Like try to spread out your team as well. Focus on a little bit of skill, Maybe then the later picks too in drafts, I like to like draft those low risk, high reward players too as well, right? Like guys that are potentially going to be in a good position this year. So maybe they're playing on starting on like the top line, or they have the chance to play up. And I like to draft those kind of guys too. Low risk, high reward players later on in the draft. I don't draft those guys early. So like for example, Bedard for me is a low risk, high reward player. I'm not drafting him where he's kind of getting drafted just because it's too early. I'm saving my low risk, high reward draft picks for later on in the draft.
So we're going to get into players that we love at their current value, players that we may not draft, and then sleepers. But do you guys have any final tips before we get into that?
You go ahead, Rory.
I don't know. Like for our league specifically, I don't think so. But like one earlier, like if you're going positionally, I'm a big load up on forwards first. Especially if it's split between wingers and then centermen. I definitely target like wingers first, and then I'll get a couple centermen, and then I go goalies lower down on the list, just because to me goalies are a crapshoot. I'm fine missing on those top three, like the main goalies, and trying to find like one of those sleeper guys. Like this won't be my pick for sleeper, but like
yes, it will.
I'd be fine. I'd be fine taking a risk on like Phoenix Copley just because is that team gonna lift him up? You know, something like that. Like this league, though, totally different. One goalie. I'm not even sure how I'm gonna game plan that one yet.
Yeah, for me, it's like they say you can't win your league on draft day, but you sure can lose it. So just make sure you do like your research, right? I'd say as well, just like throughout the year, you got to be active too. That's like the biggest thing. Those first couple weeks when guys are settling into new roles, you got to be active on the waiver wire, and don't be dropping guys on your team who were like your first, like in your first 10 rounds of picks. Like those guys, they could just got off to a slow start, and you can't overreact to slow starts. You got to be able to be patient with those guys and then draft, well, not draft, but add and drop guys on the waiver wire who you drafted late, right? And those are the guys you add and drop, and you need to be active because those guys could be league winners for you essentially and provide your team with more depth. So making add and drops, like always monitoring your bench, like making sure you're setting lineups, things like that, that's going to go well for you in your team this year if you do that.
For me, it's kind of along the lines that you said, Felix, is say you have a guy like Austin Matthews, and the Leafs play once this week. But then you've got a guy further down your depth chart on the bench, and his team plays 3 times. Maybe you want to think about who you're putting in. Matthews might not be the best example, but you want to look at how many games you're playing as well, because is Matthews going to score a couple goals in a game? Maybe. But is the other guy coming in 3 games? Is he going to have more points? Probably. So you want to see how many games your guys play that week as well, and that'll really help you with especially with your hits and your shots and all that. So that's big to check how many games each player has for the week.
Yep. So one player that we love at their current value to start off. So one of you guys can start off with your pick.
Sorry, you were cutting out there for me.
Oh, my bad.
Which one was that?
We'll start out with who we love at their draft position, at their current value.
We'll go one each?
Yeah.
One each. All right. Yeah, one guy I love is probably, I'm like an Aho, honestly. I think that he's looking to be like 4th-ish, like lower round. I'm liking him just because I think that over the last 3 years or so, Carolina's been one of those more defensive first teams. And I think, I don't know, they have so much, but they have so much offensive threat there too. And I think people are just kind of sleeping on them as a team that just only allows a couple goals against. But I think I'm waiting for that team to pop off, and Aho is going to be the guy that leads that charge. So I think that, hey, I'll take a chance on that this year. So he would be my guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Canes are. I agree. Canes are going to be really good, and Canes, to be honest, have one of the best D core in the entire league. I think with Burns and Pesci and Brady Shea, and they signed Dmitry Orlov for 7 million. They got Tony D'Angelo. Like they honestly have 6 guys that are all top 4 defensemen, and that's pretty rare for an NHL team. So I think the Canes are going to be a tough team to beat, and yeah, if you have D that can get the forwards the puck, the forwards are going to have more chances of scoring goals. So I agree with that one. Aho is a kind of a good value player there.
So I'll go to my player that I like at their current value. This player right now, average draft position of 139. This is one that it's a gamble. Coming off an injury, didn't play much last year, but to me, and I'm not going to draft defenseman right off the start, but somebody has to be feeding Ovi the 1Ts on the power play. Somebody's going to be moving the puck around quarterback in that power play for the Caps. So for me, it's John Carlson. He's been good for a lot of years. He's got like I said, 139 average draft position, but I think he's going to be solid. And that Washington power play, even though some of us, or I think all of us, didn't have them in the playoffs, still going to have a good power play. Backstrom, Ovi, Carlson, they're going to be good. So my player that I love at his current value is John Carlson.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I didn't even know that he was going that low.
Yeah,
it's crazy how some of those players can just get lost in the names just because of a year like that, right, where they're injured.
Yeah. I also have a John Carlson jersey autographed on the wall, so I like that. It'd be nice to have him on my team.
Yeah, I like that as well. What about like this isn't my value choice, but like what about Patty Kane, who's going like around? He's right now going at 170. Like, do you think
is he on a team right now though? He's not even signed.
He's on the Rangers. Yeah, the Rangers.
Oh, he is.
So he's got a chance to play with like a guy like Panarin and Panarin again, right? That connection could be lethal. Do you think like he kind of finds his game again, or what do you think?
He had the same surgery as Backstrom.
So
resurfacing. I think. Yeah. Well, I know that he's off for a little bit still.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, he's a complete wild card for me.
Yeah. So that's kind
I
of
wouldn't be touching Patty Kane.
You'd be fading then, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of appeal, but I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were on him. For me, my value pick of the draft this year, if anybody takes this guy in drafts, I'll be rattled, is Zuccarello. I'm a big Zuccarello fan. He's going at around 90 right now. He's ranked 91. So for me, that's just a guy who's like locked into playing top power play, top line with Kaprizov, and is just like always underrated as well too. So for me, it's like Zuccarello. He works hard, and he always slips in drafts too. So like he's a lock for his points, and yeah, overall I like the way he plays. He plays power play too. So I love drafting Zuccarello in drafts.
I know we want to give people time to do their research before the draft, but who are we not drafting? Start with you, Rory.
Ooh, I'll do you one better, and I'll give you an entire team. I'm not gonna end up drafting anybody on the Buds, if I'm being honest. I've never had a Buds player, really? And I just accept that I'll never have one because I'm in leagues full of Leafs fans, and so I let them fight over those players and draft them above where they are. Like I just accept that I'm never gonna get them.
Leave them for me, Rory.
I think the only one that looks fair, like reasonable value is Morgan Riley. I wonder if they think like Klingberg's going to eat some of those power play minutes, so he's just slotted a little bit lower.
I think Tavares too is not bad value either. He's like going around like 30, and that's like near Stützle. Like it's still before Marchand, so like you're not jumping on going for Tavares, right, or anything like that. You kind of just let the guys fight over those Leaf guys. And
a good thing.
Yeah, it's a little bold. It's a little bold, but also one thing that I do, actually a little tip that I like to look out for is who's in a contract year. So I just like to keep those names in the back of my mind. Like William Nylander, you know that he wants all the money he could get. He loves cash. So I think he's going to be playing his heart out this year for that contract. So I could see him even growing upon like the stats that he had last year.
No buds. That's
Unlikely.
That's
Unlikely.
awesome. That's funny.
It's just rude, man.
Buds are a good offensive team too, which is that's
I
funny.
know.
I thought you were
I
gonna
know.
say somebody like Columbus or like no guys from Columbus or something like that, but the Buds. All right.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Yeah.
So I hope this site is wrong, but I'm not drafting this guy, and nobody drafted him. We talked about him off the start. He's average draft position of 10. Vasilevsky. Why is he that high? Do not pick Vasilevsky that high.
Yeah.
He's hurt. I don't want to say Tampa's going to fall off, because if I do, they're going to win the league. But Vasilevsky, way too high. I'm not picking Vasilevsky.
Yeah. Way too high. Basically, another guy that I think is also way too high is going to be Jamie Benn. All right. Jamie Benn is way too high right now. He's going at 75, and that's before like a guy like Zuccarello. And for me, like Jamie Benn is just continuously regressing. He's not the Jamie Benn that played for Team Canada at the Olympics, and there's no way he should be going that high. I have him ranked much, much, much lower, and I'm fading him hard, and I'm drafting like he's going before like Miro Heiskanen in drafts, if you can believe that, which is
That's
just
wild.
is actually wild, yeah. So Jamie Benn's my guy that I'm fading at his current position.
Age has hit that guy kind of hard.
Yeah, exactly. As for one guys that we each like, what's one of your sleeper picks? Why don't you go first, Kijo?
I have a few here, but
Okay.
I'll start with Connor Brown. Got the Erie Otters connection back. I think he's going to go low in the drafts. He's going to, I think, have a lot of assists playing along with McDavid, or a lot of tap-ins. McDavid's going to wheel the puck around and hit him back door, but that's a tough one again, because if he's not playing with McDavid, or is that like a waste of a pick? Because where is he going to go in the lineup? I think he's one of those guys that can go up and down the lineup, but if he's on the third line, I don't think he's going to do so well if you're drafting him high. But obviously with sleepers, they're later in the draft, so I think Connor Brown is a good sleeper. And then quickly, I got two teammates. One's new to the team and one's just a young guy. I expect a lot for the value is Gabe Vilardi and Cole Perfetti. Gabe Vilardi, I think, coming off of the trade, he's going to want to show all the fans in Winnipeg and obviously LA that they lost a good player. So I think he's going to really have a good year, good sleeper pick. And then Cole Perfetti, young guy, I think he's ready to really step up and have a good year with the Jets.
Yeah, I agree. You stole mine. I was gonna say Gabe Vilardi for mine. Kingston boy as well. I would have said Vilardi too. I agree. I think he's gonna step up playing that top line in Winnipeg. He's gonna embrace that new role, I think. So another one of my sleeper picks that I have for this year is I'm a big Ivan Barbashev fan. I'm hopeful that he can continue to do well with Vegas. I'm worried that they're gonna have like a bit of a cup hangover, so I won't like. He's one of my options for like a sleeper pick, but one guy that's extremely like boomer bust that I'm intrigued about and I want to take a risk on is maybe Jonathan Drouin as well. Playing on Colorado now, I think that that connection with him and McKinnon could be found again, and again, that's boomer bust. Colorado loves to rotate guys in and out of that top spot playing with that top line. So I could see him like that not panning out after a week or two and then them going in a different direction with things. But let's say he sticks on that top line all year with McKinnon and them all in Rantanen. That's going to be like a career high this year for Drouin in terms of points and stuff. So you can get him late in drafts, and he's that low risk, high reward. Like if it doesn't pan out, so what? You drop him, you add somebody else on the waiver wire, and it's not the end of the world. All right. He does pan out, and you've got a gem that's on your team that you've picked up late in the draft. So for me, my sleeper is Drew that I'm flying on.
Yeah, all the sleepers are sort of contingent on one other factor happening, right? So, and that's just the nature of like your sleeper picks, right? The one for me, it's contingent on first power play as like the quarterback, and my pick is Sean Dursey. I think like he's in Arizona now. That first power play unit's going to have a lot of skill. Obviously, you got Schmaltz, you got Hayton, you got Keller. So I think that first power play is going to be really good. And last year they ran with JJ Moser as their first, as their primary defenseman on that unit.
Too. He had a good year in
fantasy. He did
last year too. Yeah.
He did, but Dursey's just a little bit more proven. He's a little bit more seasoned, still pretty young, but he's in LA. He was always on the second unit behind Doughty, of course. But when Doughty was hurt, obviously Dursey went up to that first unit and he did really well. So I think if he can come in, take over that first unit, I think that he'll get a good amount of points. But he's also pretty good for hits and he's good for blocks. He doesn't shoot a whole lot, but he'll get you some of that category coverage too. So I think that if he is able to secure that top power play, I think he's my sleeper pick for one of the lower end D.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few other sleepers out there, right? When you're going to do your draft, everyone do your research, right? Do maybe some mock drafts before you go into it as well. And just follow those tips that we gave today, and it'll lead you to the championship, hopefully. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, fellas. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it'll be good. Like we said, never done a league this size before, so this is all kind of new to us as well, too. With 18-team league, we're going to have some fun this year. So, what's coming up in the future for Between the Dots? So next week, we're going to be talking about our Stanley Cup predictions, as well as just previewing the regular season, giving our final thoughts on how the preseason went and what we're expecting for this regular season coming up. We're going to talk about our Vezina nominations, our Calder nominations, our Norris Trophy nominations, and then as well as like all the trophies, Hart, Selke, Rocket Richard. We're going to give all our kind of votes for that as to who we think are going to win that. So that's what's on tap next week. And yeah, other than that, down the road, we got some special guests that we're in the process of lining up. So that'll be some good content there. And yeah, just looking forward to putting out these episodes every week. Again, every Wednesday at 6:30 we go live. And then the episodes are then posted onto YouTube and onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts afterwards.
Just quickly, again, I wanted to mention, thanks to everyone that ordered one of these hoodies. They are in. If you ordered one, I'm going to get it shipped out to you ASAP, so you should have it very soon. And thanks again for getting one. They definitely look sharp, so I'm happy to have those in.
Oh, yeah, boys. Yep. Yeah, thanks again for listening. Any last words, Roy?
By the time we're on next week, there'll be 3 games played in the NHL regular season, and rosters going to be finalized. I'm excited.
Nice, yeah. Me too.
Felks, can I get a go Leafs go?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah, no way.
All righty, guys. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next week.